Great. We're here. Welcome everyone to the Voice and Song session for June 2024. Today, our focus is to accept your voice and love yourself. And in particular, what I'd like to chat about with my panel of experts here today is the difference between self-love and seeking validation from others. Self-love can get a bad rap. Do you have a big head? Do you think too much of yourself? Certainly in Ireland, we don't like anyone to get too big for their boots. So, which is good because sometimes that can be, being practical or, having a better, trying not to be more than you are, just knowing you're enough in situations. So I would like to invite my first guest, Mark Cox, from Free Your Voice. Mark is a coach, and he works with people to bring out their voice and to bring out their confidence through body work and voice work. And I'll let Mark introduce himself a little more now, and I look forward to hearing your take on self-love versus external validation. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Aideen. Yep. So I'm a coach and I work with all kinds of different groups of people. One of those groups is artists, and having a foundation in voice technique and such, I love to use those tools specifically to help people build their confidence and find their authenticity, really figure out who they are, what they want, and then put a plan together how to get there. So that's what I do. As far as self-love versus external validation, it's such an interesting conversation. Because I think I have two answers. And I don't think that they necessarily meld together nicely. I think it's almost like two extremes that are held in tension. One is, of course, we want self-love and we don't need internal or external validation, right? It's that idea of, when you say being too big for your boots, we all know people like that, right? And we've seen that. Maybe we've been that at different points in time. And it's never stemming from this idea of actually believing that you're enough. It always stems from a belief that I'm not enough, so I have to pretend to be, right? This is a large generalization, but in my experience, when I have seen that happen, there has been something outside of that person's control, which naturally places them in what the society might consider a disadvantage that they can't control. So one of those things is if it's a man who is very, very short, right? And so now it's this, sometimes I call it small man complex, because it's this idea of I don't feel like I'm enough because of how I am or how I show up or how I be. And so I'm going to compensate and I'm going to try to be, so much more. So, I think there's a large percentage of self-love that needs to be self-acceptance first and foremost. And then we can move into really enjoying who we are, rather than pretending that we're something else because we don't enjoy who we are.
Can I hop in?
Go ahead.
Because I know myself, one big realization that I had was that the people that I had the bells and whistles of success, and that I thought I admired, or that I thought, were people that, had it all, they actually in the end didn't have didn't have it all. And I realized over the years that the people I admired the most were the people who did their success and their own thing quietly, without fuss, without telling anyone necessarily that they were being successful or by putting themselves forward as a success story. It was an interesting realization because for me, this kind of takes us away from the self-love idea, right? Because we're kind of analyzing other people. But for me, I had to understand that that success isn't what it looks like on the outside. It is the person who embodies something, a quiet confidence sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And in one of the things that I've been diving into study a little more recently is the neuroscience of connection and how our brains don't show up to operate in solo. They show up to operate in community. And when we try to rewire even what we believe about ourselves and what we believe about how we show up, the most powerful way to do that is not in solo, but actually in community. So, in this other sense, so this is my other extreme, we absolutely need the external validation. We absolutely need the communities of safe people to show up authentically where we can be received in our authentic selves so that we then have the internal dialogue later that says, I'm accepted in love for who I am. So do you see how they don't really go together? But I feel like we still need both. That's my piece.
Yeah, it's so true. Well, which comes first? It's a chicken and egg situation. Like, here's one of my takes. Okay, I'll come to you, Gary, now in 2 seconds, right? I worked in Japan Airlines for about 4 years, and nobody knew that I did any singing, right? I was basically hiding a whole part of my life because it wasn't really relevant to the job I was doing, and I felt that I wasn't fully being me. It was like this big heartache or emptiness within me. So sometimes we could have great people around us, people who would support us. But if you on the inside don't acknowledge this is what I love, this is who I am, this is part of how I like to express myself, then we're never going to show it to those people externally. So if I had to choose if it's the chicken or the egg, I would choose da da da. I somehow we have to somehow have faith that we're good, that we can show who we truly are to others. And that does take a certain amount of, like you say, self-acceptance. Let's go to Gary. Gary Woolman, would you like to introduce yourself? Gary is based in Australia, right? And
Yeah.
he works with body work and voice and breath work to bring out our inner confidence. And he works with speakers and performers. Tell us a little more about what you do, Gary, and give us your take on this topic.
Thank you. It's fascinating hearing your take, both of you together, and it's given me a chance to sit back and reflect. And as you have, I've been seeing prophecies of what I'm about to speak about, pictures and scenes that have preceded these words that are now coming through. I have carried, as we all do, a core wound in this life that summates to the expression, I'm not enough. And it came out of my mom being desperately wanting to have a child when she was in the Second World War, 1945. Her sister Gladys suddenly heard she had leukemia and died. In the Jewish tradition, the firstborn, Gary, is named after the last died. And my mom's reproductive system was so screwed up for 5 years that until 1951, when I came out, she went to all the best doctors, desperate to get a child, that would be an amazing being. I am. She was pumped up with all, the right hormones and chemical, and it took 5 years for her to get pregnant. So I came out of an act of desperation, of being wanted so much. And she poured into me from my dad, who was an amazing being, amazing man. She gave up her advertising career to be with this amazing being. And some friends of hers at one point said, "Well, what are you going to choose? You're going to choose a great advertising career, or you're not going to meet someone like this ever again." So she did. And so she gave up her identity and she poured into me her frustrations about not being a successful advertising executive. So I became a very accomplished athlete, champion springboard diver, gymnast, track star. I became, in my graduating from school, my private high school I went to in New York City, Horace Mann. I got into a I received the award, the headmaster award for the one student that had the best combination of athletics and academics, but I still felt not good enough. And this propelled me when my parents wanted me to go down some straight and narrow channels to basically rebel and move into my own realm. My mom and dad, particularly my mom, didn't tell me that my great-great-grandfather on my mom's side played clarinet for the Tsar, and his brother was an artist. They wanted me to do something straight and narrow or accomplished. I was already thinking I'd be a child psychiatrist, something that would be fitting into the box or the jigsaw puzzle that they brought me up with, but I just couldn't do it. So I kept rebelling and moving west. I went to California, and then I came out as a court jester. I kept getting more and more wild to get noticed, to find my own uniqueness and authenticity. Little did I know that my background was all artists, because my father was a CPA, really successful, accomplished, but I would not fit in. It just was like oil and water. I just kept going as far away as I could to be heard. And I got outrageous and outlandish in my expression. The short version of my telling you all this is that now I'm 72, and after helping a huge amount of people, that was a way of demonstrating my self-worth to myself. I am enough, which is my mom did. I am enough by helping others. Now I've reached a point in my life with the presentation coaching and all this work I've done to help so many people out there for so long. Now I'm on the top of a mountain. I'm in a permaculture community, and I am loving my all oneness, my all aloneness, in a way that I don't have any interest in getting entangled with others to somehow measure my self-worth by how I connect with others or help others. I love helping others, yet now my focus is ye, I, oh, ooh. I do that throughout the day. Self-love, self-care, self-practices. And when I do this, I'm much more able to be there for others. Yet I'm whole and complete in a way that I never allowed myself to before, trying so hard to reach out. Now I'm reaching in, and I feel far more present and pleasant in my own skin.
That's really cool.
One other thing that I wanted to say that is about working with others that I want to reflect on in my coaching and my therapy. About 2, 3, 4 years ago, there was a man who I met. He lives in Los Angeles, and he heard about the body therapy that I was doing with one of his friends in Melbourne, Australia. She great breakthroughs in the work that I was doing with her, and her success was greater, and her astrology practice, all that she was doing, it was very moving to him. And he somehow contacted me, said, I want to learn your method of body therapy. Well, I thought that was interesting. And then I found out he has cerebral palsy. And he had hired a body therapist to travel from Las Vegas to his home. And I was showing them each stroke, the affirmations, I'm whole and complete, different things that would address this I'm not enough self-talk that he was living with. In any case, one moment which I wanted to share before I complete my share here, that I knew I wanted to share, my prophecy moments there was a moment in this first session with him when he said, enough of teaching me body work. I just want you to work with me directly. And then we started doing these Zoom sessions. And I asked him at one moment, because he's all gimped up, he's all like this. And he's saying, I had a view of myself all my life of being this disformed, disfigured being that's I'm not whole. I'm not whole and complete. I'm not enough. There's something wrong with me. I can't function. And I said, what would happen if you were to have a conversation with your cerebral palsy and give it a new name? And he said, okay, cerebral palsy, I'm going to call you creative perception. And it shifted his whole physiology. And from that moment, he's now calling himself rainbow healer, and he's honoring his uniqueness, his eccentricity, and his ways of seeing in dimensions in ways that other people can't. But we had to go through a pattern interrupt a renaming and a new dialogue with the parts of himself that he felt shamed by, blamed by, guilty about. And that was really important. I wanted to share that moment when we shift from not feeling good enough to shifting our self-talk. And now, what a magnificent opportunity. We all can do this in our own way, shift the most negative to something that's empowering, nurturing, and inspiring. I wanted to add that piece before I completed my share here tonight.
I love that. And it brings to mind this idea that sometimes our path to self-love is through someone who sees you. It doesn't have to be a whole community, and it could be a therapist. Or for me, one of the instigating points for my self-love was meeting a living saint called Mother Amma. She's known as the hugging saint. And she would go around the world, and she would basically get a big hall, and you'd get a little ticket, and there'd be music and there'd be prayers and everything. She's from India, so it's all that kind of style. And you'd wait, and then when your ticket got called up, she would literally embrace you. And what she did, she embraced me the second time I went to see her, and she said a mantra in my ear that broke down something within me that was tight and hard and stuck. And I started to soften. And the biggest thing that I needed to soften at that time was my judgment of myself, how I felt like I had let myself down. I had made the wrong choices. I didn't feel that I was good enough, in this idea that I am enough. But there was forgiveness needed, and that started it. It was an interaction with someone who was so physically, embracing me, showing me a loving gesture. I shouldn't even speak much English. She didn't speak anything in English to me, but I felt that love, and that helped me feel softer inside, and that helped me grow the self-love within me. And there were a number of things, a number of people that I would call teachers, that said things to me that allowed me to build my self-love. The next one I can mention briefly, and I'll come to you, Mark, in a second, is my teacher, Dennis, who literally all he said to me was, "Aideen, you're a kind person." And I was like looking from side to side going, is he talking about me? Am I a kind person? No one ever told me I was kind before. My identity wasn't that, even though I was the person who was always going, "I'm making tea. Does anyone else want a cup of tea?" I'm known for making cups of tea around my house. And I'd always wonder why someone made tea and not offer it to everybody, because it was just my habit. So interesting that you're helping people to find self-love, but maybe some people do need that one person to believe in them, to start that, to sow that seed, or soften that hardness inside. So it's not like there is a form of external validation going on, because we're talking about, do we need external validation? But it's really, it's more of a one-to-one thing, that one person is saying, yes, you are enough. Yes, I see you. Yes, you are enough for me, no matter what is happening with you or where you've come from. Mark, let's hear your thoughts on this. It's really interesting. Thank you so much, Gary, for that sharing. Beautiful.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I think that this is really a really great descriptor of exactly what all three of us do. Right? Like we have this common thread of having vocal technique and voice knowledge and using the voice in different capacities and this kind of thing. But really at the core of everything, the three people that I see in this room, our main role is to see people and to let them know that they have been seen. That's it, right? And so how do we promote opportunities and ways in which people can show up with the confidence to know that I will be seen here, and I will be accepted here, and I will be loved here? Because I think that's the barrier for people even entering the space to which, you might go to the hugging saint and receive something like that, where you might sign up to do some body work with Gary, where you might sign up for some coaching with Mark, right? There's a barrier there that says, yeah, but, and it's that internal dialogue again of going, but I know that I'm not lovable. I know that if they really saw me, they wouldn't accept me. And again, it's that little piece of internal dialogue that can be, and as I said before, I think there's two aspects. There's that internal dialogue, and then there's that external acceptance. And as you so adequately put, Aideen, it's a kind of a chicken and egg situation, right? You need this for this, but you also need this to even begin to go somewhere, to get maybe some outside perspective, because it takes some positive internal dialogue to be vulnerable. And it's only when the vulnerability is met with safety and acceptance that I'm willing to be more, right? It's either an upward spiral or it's a downward spiral. And, Gary, you're talking about breaking the cycle and kind of reshifting. And I think that's what it takes. It takes a real cycle breaker, but then working on both sides of that coin simultaneously to really make that cycle go back upward. So when you encounter, because I think we all have conversations with people that we're sitting across the table from maybe, and we go, you could really benefit from the work that I'm doing. You could really benefit from space to really be truly seen and accepted, because it's very clear that you don't see and accept yourself the way that would be most healthy for you. When you find someone like that who is really struggling to even bring the possibility that that could be a reality for them, and that's the barrier, what do you say to them?
I think the biggest thing for me is to let people know that I'm here. I think that I don't know if I can help someone to make that change by telling them that there's a change being needed or by suggesting that they come work for me. But I know that by modeling that I feel good about myself and that I'm willing to put myself out there, and people say that the stuff I put out there inspires them, and I don't do it because I'm trying to inspire them. I'm basically doing it so that I suppose deep down I just want to help people like this motivation, but also to have a business that supports my life. And I love people. I've always loved people, and I'd like them to know that I'm around, and that I'd like, if possible, for the way that I put myself forward to show that and to invite people. And I'd love to invite anybody listening actually, to take a next step. But I also know that sometimes someone's next step isn't necessary to work with me, but it's something simpler. And that's something simple that might be join a choir or start journaling or some small interim step, that they will come around to either connecting with me or someone who does similar work to what I do, because I think there's lots of paths to get where you want to go. So that's what I would say to that. Gary?
Yes. I'm reflecting on what happened after I realized, not even knowing, when I came out as a court jester in Hawaii and began doing these outlandish performances and living legends of different cultures and improvisational storytelling. I actually had a woman that I was in love with back then who gave me permission, because she was already a performer, to come out as a performer. I was a scientist, I was an athlete, I was I was not involved in that, so that freed me up. And the very thing that my parents didn't want me to do, which is to, to enter into a insecure profession, that I'm now teaching and I'm working with people to bring out their creativity, their authenticity. Michelangelo had this beautiful statement: I saw the angel in the marble and I chiseled everything else away and out came the angel. I'm saying this because there's a couple of moments that I am now thinking of that I knew I'd be sharing with you. And one of them is, about 7 years ago, I was visiting back Hawaii, where I spent many years in my 30s. And there was a workshop, again, the same workshop, the transforming your message with your body and voice, that I was leading. And there were dancers and movement specialists from all over the world that came to this One Dance Tribe workshop in Maui. I remember at the lunch break, just before doing my presentation, that there was a man that came to me and he said, look, I feel like I struggle when I'm in front of people, and I'm a teacher, I'm a dance teacher, but I struggle to be seen. And which is what I'm finding with almost everyone I work with. There's this challenge, this dialogue, as you mentioned, Mark, about the dialogue on the one hand of I'm afraid of I can't be seen or heard or understood. So he stood in front of the group. There were about 30 people from all over the world in this group. I remember this moment. It's actually in my YouTube channel, this moment. It's a magnificent thing that happened. What happened was he stood up there and I told the group, well, this is a conversation we had, and he wants to share, what is it actually that's holding you back from really feeling like you can present your authentic self when you're in front of people? And he started to shake. And he said, oh, well, I grew up in New York City, and I was always attacked and bullied when I was young. Everyone was like attacking me and bullying me. And tears are streaming down his face at this point. And he said, when I'm standing in front of people, I feel like I'm going to be attacked. And he was crying, crying, crying. And he was being witnessed by this whole group, which was such a beautiful thing, because in honoring his vulnerability, and then one person after another from different countries said, you're the kind of person, you're the kind of teacher that I want to work with. And suddenly he shifted his self-talk to, it's safe for me to be seen. I love being seen. It's safe for me to be heard. And that was a defining moment in his life. Very, very powerful. One more moment that I wanted to share that I was thinking of a couple of minutes ago as well. I went to a 5 Rhythms dance class. I've gone to so many of those over the years before I became a dancing freedom facilitator. One night after a 5 Rhythms dance class in Melbourne, a bunch of us were having Vietnamese food. And there was a man sitting across with me, about 10, 15 people at the table. And I approached him, similar to what you two were talking about. What do you do when you want to approach someone and you realize that I think you could benefit from what I'm doing? And didn't quite happen that way. I offered to share a session with him. I didn't really know who he was or what he was. I offered to pretty much everybody anyway, so it was kind of just shotgun. He came for a session, and then he came for a series of sessions. He told me he's a pianist. This is good because we're having a conversation about the voice. He said, I'm a pianist, I'm an IT specialist, I'm good with math, I'm good with music. And he was just breaking up in a relationship with a woman, not feeling good enough. And I asked him, as homework after the session, would you please, Jeff is his name, make a piece of music that demonstrates your feelings of breakdown and aloneness and feeling lonely and not good enough. And he did a piece, and it was musical, and that was cool. He came back for another session, probably another 20 sessions actually. But by the 22nd or third or fourth session, I said, now, how about adding some words to it? He said, no, I don't do words. I do the music. I'm behind the scenes. But he did. He started to do it. And after a while, he began to write his own songs, met a woman who he married, and they go around to churches and they create songs, spiritual events, their own songs, Rumi prayers, Rumi song. And now it's what he does for a living. He's honored his being good enough. He loves being seen, that he had to go through the dialogue of, I can't do this, to slowly, I gave him encouragement to do one little piece of homework after another. Do the playing, which you do already. Now add some words, and boom, he came right out. But it's that giving permission to that dialogue to shift the dialogue tiny little by little bit, so the door slowly opens. And now he's doing it for his livelihood. What a fulfilling experience.
Wow. Wow. There's something to this idea of also, as we work in this, right? We create space for people to just be themselves. but everybody goes through their life and has an opportunity to see the people around them and accept them or judge them. So I wonder, is there, do we need to start showing love to others and self-acceptance to others as a path to starting to accept ourselves? Is there, like, is the judgment that we have toward others something that needs to soften along with our judgments of ourselves and our kind of restrictions? Gary?
It's a fine line, and I'm thinking about a number of people that I've assisted in the past. Some are just not ready, and you can't force it. Some people. I remember once I was working with a woman who saw me very physically animated on stage doing one of my presentations, and she said, "I want to work with you. I'm feeling really stuck, and I don't feel safe exposing and sharing, expressing myself. I'm very stiff." So I gave her a session. And similarly to this conversation, I wanted to get underneath the dialogue to what's really going on. And she said, "I want presentation coaching." I said, "Great. What's holding you back? Give me a moment where you closed up." And she, again, reached a moment of pain where she said, "Oh my goodness, when I was a little girl, I was a baby, 1 or 2, 3 years old. I was really my father and me naked and played billiard balls and shot billiard balls out." You
The internet has just dropped out a little bit there, Gary. My apologies if you're watching us live. We're having a technical difficulty here.
I thought you were going to give me present. She wasn't ready. And she wasn't ready, and she closed up, and it was very difficult. I never saw her again. So some people are ready, some people are not. I have to take a moment to say something. I thought we were going to the hour, and I have my
Yes.
friend at a meeting in 5 minutes in Nashville. So I'm going to need to leave in 2 minutes and go to my other
No
Zoom
problem, Gary.
channel. But I wanted to be sure that we're all.
I'll be putting Gary's, Dr. Gary Woolman's contact details into the show notes on YouTube and in Facebook. And I encourage the listeners to
meeting.
check him out.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gary, there was a little interference with the internet. Thank you for being here.
It's such a pleasure to be with you, both of you. I'm enjoying these meetings. Let us know, let me know when the next one is. I'm appreciating the deep dive, and that I still have 5 minutes. The combination of, you were saying, letting go of judgments. I let go of judgments with this woman, but she didn't go of judgments for herself. And you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them, swim in it. Sometimes people are ready, and I'm learning more to receive people's readiness rather than think that I know better. Even if I know they could be helped, I feel like it's energetically not right to let a person know that I think you need help. If they say I'm stuck, there's an opening door. If I say I think you're stuck, that is energetically, I feel not respectful of a person's. I think it's better to reach a person as they're being stuck. Say, I see, like you said, you said just let them accept me. I just let them know I'm there. That's what you said. So it's a gentle process, and I've made the error many, many times of being forceful and energized because I have the ability to like wake up the dead practically. And yet it's best that I let it come to me rather than feel like I have to initiate. I'm now 72. It's taken me decades to allow myself to receive this rather than flaunt it upon others because I know I have the gifts. it has to come from others first.
Yeah.
I'm
Perhaps
learning.
just asking that question, do you feel stuck? And then if they say something, then yeah. Mark, back to you.
Good night, you both. Good day. We'll talk again soon. Bless
Bye,
you.
Gary.
Okay, great to see you.
Beautiful connecting. Love it. Such an opportunity to share.
Okay. We're still here, Gary. So we have another 5 minutes. Any kind of maybe final words or anything that Gary was saying that you wanted to speak to?
Yeah, I think that initial concept of, being ready, um, coming from a place of, being open and accepted. You were sharing how your solution to the question that I posed was offering your presence. I'm here, is a great way of saying that. And I think it's interesting, even in the stories that Gary shared, that the most powerful version of transformation that you see in these areas is really that of community, right? It's when you as an individual have now been placed in a place in where you have taken that leap off the cliff that is vulnerability sometimes, and it's just a free fall, and you're hoping you don't crash at the bottom. And that's exactly what it feels like. You in that moment need someone to catch you. Because if you do crash and burn, you're never going to make that leap again. You won't do it. And so you need someone to catch you. And when you are caught by a community of people, not just one, for every person that shows up in that catch, it's that much more meaningful. It is exponentially more meaningful. And I think it's really interesting because we want to change that internal dialogue. But really, what we're doing so many times is there is things in our past. It is oftentimes the effects of some trauma in our past that have given us, that have taught us that internal dialogue. And for every time that we've heard that thing or we've experienced that negativity when we've been vulnerable in the past, that's another neural pathway that's just laid down again and again and again. It's like putting an extra piece of pavement onto a highway, and it's never going to be broken up. The best we can do is we really are looking to build a new highway, build an exit ramp. Because if the exit ramp is bigger than what the highway is, the highway only has 1 lane and the exit ramp has 5, most people, myself included, are going to be like driving along, and I'm going to be on the exit and not even know it, right? And that's exactly what happens with our brains sometimes, right? And so as we build these new pathways, these new ways of thinking, I see that as that vulnerability being met by community. And for every person that shows up, it's that much more reinforced. And then you get to the point where then someone else is trying to build in the opposite direction and bring that negativity, and you can remain unaffected. You can choose to then say, I have a different internal dialogue. I know that's not true. When someone tells me that 2 + 2 is 5, I remain virtually unaffected by that. I just know that's not true. I have enough experience with other external sources telling me that that's not true. I have enough experience with my own self saying that that's not true, that I'm not affected by that. And that's the same thing when we're talking about our view of self, right? We have to have that place where we are seen and accepted, where our vulnerability, that free fall, can be met in safety, someone catching us, someone embracing us. And then we can learn to embrace ourselves. And when that happens, I think that's the switch. And we begin spiraling upward and eventually get to the point that when we do hear that negativity coming from the outside, we go, that's not reality. I'm sorry you don't see the real me. There are people who do, and I'm one of those people.
I do love that. And I think it's really important if anybody's listening, I'm sure somebody might be listening. Like if anybody is listening to our thing, You know, sometimes there's people around us that are really validating us, but we reject that validation. So if there's someone in your life that is already kind to you, that is already encouraging you, try to let that in. There are people that are friends. There's maybe a grandparent.
Mhm.
There's teachers. Sometimes it's not the person that you would love it to be. Maybe your
Yeah.
sister is the one you'd like to get validation from, but it doesn't come from there. It comes from your teacher in your pottery class or whatever it is. But start to acknowledge that those people in your life, you don't have they haven't had to pay to get the validation from. There's people around us usually, and we can see them. If you could see that, that would be good. And the other thing that I think is worth mentioning before we wind things up is what kind of thoughts, what kind of words can you put into your mind that help you create that off ramp? And here's a
Mhm.
few of my suggestions would be maybe I am good enough, right? So put in ask a little sliver of doubt to if you're feeling I'm not enough, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not skinny enough, blah blah blah. But maybe you are. Maybe you are okay. Maybe it's not as bad as you think. And the other one that I like to use is even if I'm not enough today, I'm becoming enough, or I'm learning to accept myself, or whatever it might be. So sometimes little affirmations and the use of language is important in this. Um, if we're too rigid with a phrase, any phrase, things are like this is how it is. It's like a robotic way of looking at life. Often there are shades in it. Usually this is the truth. In most instances, I can depend upon this idea, but maybe not always. And maybe there are moments in my life when I am not enough, where I have let someone down, where I've let myself down. But I don't need to be defined by that moment of not enoughness. When I look at my whole self and my intention to be the best I can be, then the big picture is I am enough. And if you're listening, you are enough too. Any final little gems of wisdom, Mark, that might help someone right now?
I think if you're listening to this and you're struggling with the I am not enough concept, surround yourself with the people who believe you are, and you will know them because they will never tell you what you should be. They will only tell you what you are, and they will be happy about it.
It's beautiful. We have a phrase here at home, don't be shitting on me, because every now and again Mike will make an amazing breakfast and his mother will be like, you should open a restaurant. We're like, no, Mike's a musician and a music producer. He doesn't want to open a restaurant. And we laugh about it, because people say, oh, you should do this and you should do that.
Mhm.
They don't mean it badly, but sometimes it feels like a judgment, right? That you're doing something that you're not doing the thing you should be doing. And
Mhm.
when we look at my husband and all of his talents and his gifts and what he enjoys, there's absolutely no way he should be opening a restaurant. And it was just a turn of phrase, but it kind of hit us,
Mhm.
right? So yeah. We sometimes have to defend ourselves from that kind of behavior and say, no, well, actually, you're shitting on me, mom. And she'll laugh about it. So, you know, people do mean well, but when we spot the people who really encourage us and like us and be around those people more, then there's a real opportunity for you to blossom, because each of us has gifts. Each of us, in essence, is enough. And if you need someone to guide you through that process, then Mike, Mark, Gary, myself, and many other people are out there that will be so happy to be of service to you. Um, Trust your next instinct, trust that next step. Because what I think a lot of people do is they doubt themselves so much that they won't take a next step. So just test this out. If you feel like getting in touch with one of us from today for a chat, free chat, then maybe you're good enough to do that. Maybe you can. So, because we're open to it. So, and you don't know where that might take you. So I'd encourage anybody watching to take a next step. It doesn't have to be towards me or Mark or Gary. It can be towards the pottery class that you've always wanted to do, but take a next step. Take the next step. You probably know what it is right now. Yeah? Can you hear yourself thinking that thought? Yeah, do it. Thank you, Mark, for being here. It's been an amazing session. The voice and song sessions happen every 2 months or so. We talk about voice, we talk about self-acceptance, self-love, and confidence. And Mark has been a guest on many of these sessions, and they're available to watch the recordings on YouTube. So you can find more of these discussions there. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, Aideen.